Okay. How's everybody doing this morning? Good. Well, I'm going to talk about legacy, and I'm going to use David because I've been using David the last 4 times I spoke. So that's what I will continue. Might as well, right? Acts 13, the Passion Translation. I love this version. It says, God raised up David to be king, for God said of him, I have found in David, son of Jesse, a man who always pursues my heart and will accomplish all that I have destined him to do. And I love the way that is in the Passion because it says, a man who always pursues my heart. And you know, the other versions, when you think about David, it's possible to get into just even thinking that there's a moment that your heart just aligns enough where your heart is after God because you want good things, you're trying to love, you have a level of conviction in your life. But the way that it's in the Passion Translation, it actually speaks of this place in your heart that longs for God, who pursues God at all times. You know, sometimes we feel we get to a sweet place with God. And sometimes it's easy just to stay in that sweet place. But David didn't just stay in a sweet place, he continued to pursue God. And that when you realize that God is who he says he is, there's always going to be a deeper place in his heart. And there's always something new to discover. And David understood that. And so even as he's understanding who he was as his shepherd, as he understood who he was as his father, he didn't just stop there. He continued day after day to pursue God with all his strength. If you continue to pursue the heart of God, you will continue to mature your love, and your heart will continue to be enlarged. If you continue to sincerely pursue his heart, you will find deeper humility, reverence, respectfulness, deeper trust, devotion, obedience, faithfulness, and a tender heart that is quick to repent. When love matures, you long to fulfill what is in the Father's heart more than anything, out of affection and conviction. When you pursue the heart of God in all seasons, it is very difficult to live in disappointment or in hope deferred. There's an exercise of pursuing the heart of God through all times that will really change the outcome of your life, of your story. And you see with David, as I've been talking about David, and if you haven't been here, you can go back and listen, or you just read 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel, just read the 2 books. It's just amazing that, you know, he's anointed, and you will think that then everything is going to be amazing. But it wasn't. And there's some amazing moments. Then now he takes down the giant, and now he is the man. Amazing. But then he wasn't, right? And he just continues this life of amazing things and not so amazing things. Here's my daughter. I'm taking back my daughter. She's not your wife anymore. I mean, you know, it's just, that's not very amazing. Right? So David goes through all these things, and somehow the Father talks about him. His legacy is that he was a man who pursued the heart of God always. That he never stopped. What a legacy. We're going to be in 2 Samuel 7. And this is out of the Message. But I want to give you a little bit of context, right? I talked about he went through all these things, but then even after Saul and Jonathan die in battle, David becomes the king of Judah, but for 2 more years, you know, still the kingdom is divided. And and there's still just there's all this resistance. There's no peace in the land, and even as a nation, they're not united. And they're fighting against their own brothers. And there's a moment where David becomes the king of all Israel. And he has a little break, a little moment of peace in this crazy story. And this is where chapter 7 starts. It says, "Then one day King David said to Nathan the prophet, 'Look at this. Here I am, comfortable in a luxurious house of cedar, and the chest of God sits in a plain tent.' Nathan told the king, 'Whatever is in your heart, go and do it. God is with you.' But that night, the word of God came to Nathan, saying, 'Go and tell my servant David, this is God's word on the matter. You're going to build a house for me to live in? Why? I haven't lived in a house from the time I brought the children of Israel up from Egypt till now. All that time I move about with nothing but a tent. And in all my travels with Israel, did I ever say to any of the leaders I commanded to shepherd Israel, why haven't you built me a house of cedar?' So here's what you are to tell my servant David. The God of the angel armies has this word for you. I took you from the pasture, tagging along the sheep, and made you prince over the people of Israel. I was with you everywhere. You went and moved your enemies down before you. Now I'm making you famous to be ranked with the great names on earth." Okay, I want to pause there for a moment. I believe that if your heart pursues the heart of God at all times, you will have a heart that is surrendered in a way that can allow God to actually bless you with all the blessings He wants to bless you. Now, we're all blessed already just because He's just such a good God. It says that He reigns on the wicked and on the just. He is that good that He gives good gifts not just to His kids, but just to all people. And even as people just take into kingdom principles, they work for them and they get blessed by it. But there's way more in God's heart for us. And you can only step into that when you have a heart that is fully devoted to Him. And now you have David, who his heart was for God. His heart was fully given to the Lord. And you see that through his pain, his heart was the Lord's. Through his victories, he continued to look up and give God honor. Through all these different things, he stays focused and his heart is the Lord's. Now, I believe that so many people in the church are walking in a level of blessing, but it's not this level of blessing. Because we're still too big. It's still too much about us. We still want it to be our way too much. We're not willing to, it's hard to fully let go. But the interesting thing is that if you look for that favor, for that honor, you may get a little bit of it, but it may not last that long. But when you don't look for it and it's really about Him, then God says, you know what, because of that, you're going to be known as one of the greatest men that ever lived. For the rest of history, David gets to be one of the most esteemed men, one of the greatest men that walked the earth, because his heart was willing to be fully yield to Him. What a legacy. What do you want your legacy to be? Then God says, I am going to give you peace from all your enemies. And this is the response. So around verse 11. Furthermore, God has this message for you. God himself will build you a house. When your life is complete and you're buried with your ancestors, then I will raise up your child, your own flesh and blood, to succeed you. And I will firmly establish his rule. He will build a house to honor me, and I will warranty his kingdom's rule permanently. I will be a father to him, and he will be a son to me. Okay, so now David is trying to be loving, right? And in a way that he was in full surrender, where it's like, this is not about me. Wait a second. And he does something that it was not required of him, right? The thing that moved the heart of God was that he never commanded anybody to build him anything. That was not a requirement. But out of a place of affection, David, and out of a place of honor, David goes like, wait a second. I know, and this is what is happening in David's heart. He's like constantly living out of a place of gratitude. He's like, every good thing comes from God. Every victory I have, everything that, I shouldn't be where I'm at. It is the grace of God in my life who allows me to be here. It's like, I have a house of cedar and he's in a tent. And there's a place of worship in his heart, of devotion. He's like, you know what? This is not okay. I want to build you a house, right? Isn't it amazing that it's like when there's the core of your heart has that level of devotion, God can trust you with everything. And then God comes around and is like, okay, this is what I always wanted. This is what I dreamed. This is why I created humanity. This is why everything that we've seen in history, this is the moment. This is why I created human beings in my likeness, in my image, so there can be a possibility of a response in a heart like in this moment with David. And God is captured by that. It's like, okay, you want to build me something? You know what? You're not even going to get to build me the house. It's going to be your son. But this is what I'm going to do for you because of your heart. I will build your house. I'm going to be a father to your son. I will father him. I'm going to raise your son. And he gets personal with him and he says, and he's going to be a son to me. He's going to understand sonship. He's going to really understand. That revelation is going to live in him. And you know what? This is like, I took my hand away from Saul, but I will never take my hand from you. And this kingdom will go into eternity, right? We know that Jesus becomes a descendant of David. And because of that, now you and I, we are blessed because David chose that day to surrender his heart fully. Now we can fully be a part of this. Of course, God was going to find someone because he was a part of his plan, but it became David. There had to be a man. There had to be somebody who yielded his heart this way. So what's going to be your legacy? So I'm going to put a new level of favor, a new level of peace. He says, but I will never remove my gracious love from him as I removed it from Saul, who preceded you. Your family and your kingdom are permanently secure. I am keeping my eye on them, and your royal throne will always be there, rock solid. What a blessing. So David responds to this. And I'm going to read out of, this is the NIV, but in verse 28 and 29. Sovereign Lord, you are God. Your covenant is trustworthy, and you have promised these good things to your servant. Now, be pleased to bless the house of your servant, that I may continue forever in your sight. So this is the blessing that David, even in the response, David goes like, God, once again, all I want is to be next to you. All I want is to stay connected to you. I want nearness with you, right? This is the response of David. Isn't that amazing? There's no place in him where he goes like, oh my gosh, I'm so awesome. Like, I mean, my kids better be grateful because, you know, I mean, there's no place like that. And he just goes like to this, he continues to go into this place of humility. And he's like, I just love being close to you. I want to stay close to you. For you, sovereign Lord, have spoken, and with your blessing, the house of your servant will be blessed forever. Full trust, full faith. You spoke, and this is going to happen. He's like, he knew, he knew he was set. But even in that, he just brought it back again. Hey, this is my heart, is to be next to you. David steps into the breakthrough. As he receives the blessings from heaven, he never forgot where his strength came from. His heart continued to turn to God. So now you have David, chapter 8, just walking in a new level of authority, walking in a new level of victory. And if you read that chapter, I'm not going to read that chapter to you, so you can read it later. But you see that then there's almost like an ease for every victory they have. And it's just kind of, even the way that is described, it's like there's no resistance in these battles. There's like, you see they're coming and they're just taking over. They're overcoming all their enemies. And then he just says, yeah, like 10,000 of this and thousands of this and thousands of that, and they just overcome. There's just this ease to overcome and to take ground when you live in a new level of breakthrough and favor with God. And that's what God wants to do with us. That's what God wants to do with his people. Because the more we walk in authority and breakthrough, the more we see the kingdom of heaven come to earth. And that's what we're going for. Verse 11 says, King David dedicated these articles to the Lord, as he had done with the silver and gold from all the nations he had subdued. So he just continues to go like, you know what? Even this favor and this blessing has nothing to do with me, for your glory. And he continues to just dedicate everything to the Lord. And he just, as he goes and takes over all these nations. And it says in verse 15, David reigned over all Israel, doing what was just and right for all people. What a legacy. You know, if you try to do what's right and just for all people, you may do some great things and some okay things and maybe some dumb things. But if you have a heart that is just fully surrendered to God, if you move out of that place, then this becomes possible. Because if we operate in our own wisdom, there's limitations. But the more, if you continue to pursue the heart of God, then you're going to do things who are going to look like his heart. And his heart is for all people. People with good intentions, they end up hurting some people. But when you choose to follow him with all your heart, things get aligned inside of you. The choices we make have a greater impact beyond what you can think. I think it's important that we understand that God takes his hand from Saul and he puts it on David, and he makes a promise that he will never take his hand away from him and his descendants, right? That blessing applies to us through Jesus. We cannot live wondering like, did I just mess it up? Was it maybe a little too much? Maybe I don't get to walk in the full of blessings because of that, or because of this, or because because of the lack of faith, or because of none of those things at the end of the day matter. You can go and realign your heart with truth. And the moment you do that, you have full access again. And God is not going to say, you know what, I'm done with you. I tried so hard. It was just too hard. God's not going to do that with you. He said, I will never take my hand away. And that is a promise. There's those kind of words. When I find those things, I was like, this is amazing. we get to live with the blessing of that. Of course, God was always looking for that. He was looking for somebody. Isn't it amazing that he looks for people to activate the things that are in his heart, the dreams that are in his heart? How many dreams that are in his heart are you going to unlock? Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about Mephibosheth, or Mephibosheth. I don't know how you call him. But this guy, Mephibosheth, in between, the son of Jonathan, grandson of Saul. You guys know the story. Because God takes his hand from Saul, because Saul, his heart became hard against God, and now his choices have a consequence on his family, and his kids were supposed to they were supposed to be the future kings, but now that blessing is taken away, and everybody knows it, right? So imagine being that kid. You're like, my grandpa blew it, and now the blessing was taken away. And now I grew up fatherless. My father and my grandfather died in war. And not just that, but the nurse that was, the lady was taking care of him, when they had to run after they lost that battle, it says that she dropped him. And after that, he became paralyzed, and he couldn't use his legs. So now you have this kid who's growing up knowing that he's lost the blessing of God in his life, in his lineage. And not just that, but now he has no legs that work. As in those days, and especially as a man, you want to be a provider, a protector, and this guy is just gone to a very low place. But David, once again, you remember that Jonathan and David have this divine friendship. And there is this loyalty that they had for each other. And Jonathan makes an amazing choice. And his choice is that he knows that, if you want to put it in human ways, he's supposed to be the new king. But he knows that God has chosen David. And he chooses to align his heart with God's ways. And because of that, he's able to create this friendship with David. He's able to be loyal in his friendship with David. And because of that, David makes a promise to him that he will have mercy on his ancestors, on his descendants. And so now you have David, he stops and he goes, is there anybody, any descendants, right, of Jonathan? I want to make it right with him because of my friendship with Jonathan. So the choice of Jonathan, that choice where he's like, God, know my ways. Know the earthly ways, is going to be your ways. Because of that, he was able to align himself. He allowed a blessing to pass. Even after the Lord had taken his hand out of his family, he allowed this blessing to pass into his kid. And so this is what's happening here. Chapter 9. When Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, the son of Saul, came to David, he bowed down to pay him honor. David said, Mephibosheth, at your service, he replied. Don't be afraid, David said to him, for I will surely show kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore you all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table. Mephibosheth bowed down and said, what is your servant that you should notice a dead dog like me? He had a hard time receiving things. I mean, you think that there's some deep stuff happening in this poor guy over here, right? A dead dog. If somebody gives you a great gift and you find yourself just kind of like having a really hard time receiving it, just get some prayer because God wants to heal that. But this guy is like, another level. I was like, why in the world would you want to show kindness to me? I'm just a dead dog. The choice of his father to see past any ambition changed his life completely. Then the king summoned Ziba. So Ziba is a man of honor. He has a lot of servants. And it says, and he used to serve Saul, right? His grandfather. And he said to him, I have given your master's grandson everything that belongs to Saul and his family. You and your sons and your servants are to farm the land for him and bring in the crops, so that your master grandson may be provided for, and Mephibosheth, grandson of your master, will always eat at my table. Now Ziba had 15 sons and 20 servants. That's pretty cool. I don't only have servants, I have servants. Well, it's not very cool for like our time, but it's like a spiritual picture, right? We don't believe in that. But if you think about it in a spiritual picture, this guy goes from like, my life is over. Like I lost the blessing of God in my life. Not just that, I'm crippled. He's living in shame, thinking the sin of my grandfather probably, or who knows what, and now this is punishment from God. I don't know what he was believing, but he was definitely not in a good spot. He's just seen himself as this, I just might as well be a dead dog. There's no worth to me. Mephibosheth means mouth of shame. We cannot allow shame in our lives. When we understand what God's done for us, shame cannot have a place in our heart. Isn't this whole picture sounds like something that God will do? Because we were out of nowhere, he picked us up, and he restores all things, not because we did anything, out of his pure goodness and grace. And not just restores us, he not just gives us the inheritance that belonged to our fathers, but he says, hey, you get to sit with me. You have a seat at the table. Doesn't that sound like something like the Heavenly Father will do? So when you pursue the heart of God with all your heart, and every moment you start doing things that look like your Father. So that's David looks like the Father in this place. He fully restores this man who has no value. In one moment, he makes him a wealthy man. Can you imagine, like, this Saul had a lot of life. He was the first king of Israel. He said, like, it's all yours. It's not like, I'm going to give you half, because Saul just showed, he chased me for like, it was not easy. So you get half. No. You have David, it's like, you see his heart of extravagance, his heart of, it looks like the Father. It's like, you will have all of it. Way more than what you need. He didn't need all of that. But you know what? The Father wants to give you things that you don't even need, so you can be a blessing to others. That's how he operates. Isn't that amazing? But when you pursue God with all your heart, you will start doing things like your Father. Ephesians chapter 1. This is the message. How blessed is God, and what a blessing he is. He is the Father of our Master, Jesus Christ, and takes us to the high places of blessings in him. Long before he laid down earth's foundation, he had us in mind, had settled on us the focus of his love, to be made whole and holy by his love. Long, long ago, he decided to adopt us into his family through Jesus Christ. What a pleasure he took in planning this. He wanted us to enter into the celebration of his lavish gift given by the hand of his beloved Son. What an incredible thing. David made the dream of God possible through his life. Isn't that amazing that God set things up the way he does? It doesn't even make sense. But the level of trust that he puts, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to create them with full freedom to choose whatever they want to do. And I'm going to put opportunities. And in the opportunities, there will be people who will connect to my heart. And when they do, I will bless everyone because of that. He's that good. He takes the surrender of David to bless all people. That is wild. What's going to be your legacy? Is it going to be that you chase God with all your heart when you were in pain? What if all the promises he gave you never happened? Will you still worship him with all of your heart? Will you still chasten him with all your heart? Are you going to stay faithful? Are you going to stay obedient, trusting? David was able to do that. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom should I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom should I be afraid? Fully trust. He's able to fully trust. Fully devoted. You have filled my heart with greater joy than when their grain and new wine abound. So in the midst of all the blessings, he still is completely devoted. He doesn't get too I'm sure he was excited. Everybody loves the blessings and the new wine. I'm sure it was great. But in that place, he's fully devoted, faithful. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In the midst of all of it, I will do this over and over again, even if it doesn't come out the way I thought it was going to come out. He stayed obedient. Give me understanding, and I will keep your law and obey it with all my heart. It was not easy sometimes. And it's not that you pretend like things are not hard sometimes, but you come to this place, it's like, God, I would like to understand what you're thinking right now. What's going on? What's happening inside of you right now? Because this doesn't seem like a good thing. Sometimes we need that, but he's every time you question God that way, it should be because you're in pursuit of his heart. You're wanting to understand who he is, not because you just want answers. I deserve answers. Many times that's how we come to God, with an attitude of deserving some answers. I did what he told me to do, and it just got worse. And everybody thinks that I'm a horrible person, or I'm prideful, or this or that, and I was just doing what you called me to do. But David will come after God and say, help me understand. Give me understanding. And I will continue to keep your law and obey. So even if I don't understand, I will continue to keep your law and obey. The choices you make in your heart, how much is your heart going to chase after him? Those choices, the big choices, will have an impact on your children's children. When you think about that, the hell you're going through right now is nothing. And it's so worth it to do it. God, I am yours no matter what. I will chase you. I will chase after your heart no matter what. I will stay faithful no matter what. Loving, devoted, obedient, no matter what. Can I have the ministry team back here? The ministry team, the worship team, sorry. Will you open your heart to God and just in honesty? Many times it's just when the choice comes from the core of who you are. It doesn't matter how strong you feel right now in your faith or how stable you feel. If you start making choices from the core of who you are, you're going to see God move and do things in your life that you never dream or imagine. But all these things that we go through give us an opportunity to show more faithfulness, obedience, loyalty. Many times we think that we know what's happening inside of us and we don't. And when God shows up, big time, many times we can see things that we didn't see before. And when he doesn't show up the way that we thought he was going to show up, or we don't see him, then there's things that come up also. And through all those things, what is going to be our response? What's going to be your legacy? Do you want your legacy to be that you chase after his heart with all your heart, with all your strength? And you know what? That doesn't mean that you just super love God and you don't really like people as much. You can't do that. That doesn't work. It's like I'm all about God, cannot stand people. Right? It says like you can't say that you love God and you hate your brother. We need to transition from that place where it's not about our cedar house, it's about his presence. Where it becomes about giving and loving God. When you choose to love people in radical ways, in ways that you didn't need to. The Bible already tells us, hey, care for the poor, the orphan, the widow, all over the place, right? But when you choose to go an extra mile like David did, when he wasn't asking for a cedar house, but David wanted to build him one anyways. When you choose to live that way, you start just loving people beyond, you start asking God, will you increase my capacity to love people? When you do that, it moves the heart of God in ways that will change everything. Mephibosheth life was changed. Solomon got to be fathered by God. What if there was that thing in David's heart that God was so moved that it made God want to encounter Solomon and offer him whatever he wanted? And allowed an experience for him. He says that he became a father to Solomon. He gave him an ability to feel and know what it was in the Father's house, in the Father's heart. What if your choices are gonna make the Father want to father your kids that way? What if we all come together and we actually start doing that and from the core of who we are, we say, God, your ways. It's all back in your hands anyways. It was your idea. What if the children of a whole city get to be fathered by him because of that? What's going to be your legacy? Will you stand with me? Now, if you've never prayed and if you've never given your heart fully to God, I want to give you an opportunity to that. And if you feel like there's just a lot of places that you're holding on to, and you're holding this tension of like, God, if you don't come through here, I'm really going to be very disappointed. It may take me 5 years. I'll still love you, but I'm going to be angry for like 5 years. There's still a wrestle where you're not fully just putting everything at the altar. If there's conditions that you're putting to your affection, I feel like we have the opportunity to just surrender our hearts again. Will you pray with me if that's you? Father, my heart is yours. Father, without conditions, my heart is yours. Jesus, thank you for making a way. Thank you for making a way so I can be fully adopted as a son, as a daughter today. Thank you that you've made a place at the table for me. And if you've allowed shame in your life, will you just get rid of it right now? That is not from God. He doesn't want you to walk with shame. Just turn to Him in any place in your heart that you need to turn to Him. Father, will you wash us today with your truth? You know that it says that where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. Not just freedom of shame, but freedom to love beyond our capacity. There's an empowerment to become more like your Father. To carry His atmosphere. To carry His love and His hope. You're called to that. This last encounter night, we started to sing Majesty, and something happened in the room. And I felt God so strong, and I felt this need to just say Father. It was like I felt like I needed to say it. Like I needed to say Father. And every time I said Father, I felt like something was breaking inside of me. You know, many times we want to love God with all our hearts, but sometimes we are at capacity. We want to love God more, but we are at capacity. We're already giving what we can give. And God has to come and He has to enlarge our hearts. But sometimes our hearts need to be a little softer so they can actually be stretched up a little bit more. And God today, He's inviting you to be stretched a little bit more. And every time I said Father, I felt like things were breaking inside of me. So I felt like He was expanding. And I felt like I just needed to keep saying Father. And every time I say Father, I just felt His pleasure even more. And I said it over and over again until I just couldn't, until I just lost it because He's so good. Just gratitude just filled me up. What a beautiful thing that we can have overflowing gratitude even when things are hard. Do you want to chase after Him every day? God, will you enlarge our hearts today, Father? Father, will you encounter us? God, we want to become like you. We want to love like you. We want to bring your kingdom, God. You are so majestic and beautiful, and we want the whole world to see that, to encounter that. We want our kids and our children's children and their children, God, to know the beauty of who you are, to understand what it's like to walk with you, to be near to you, to long for you when in the good times and in the bad times, God. God, we want to see that bride that you long for, God. We want to become that bride. Transform our hearts today, God. help us to let go. God, help us to make those choices today.